The air hung thick with nostalgia as I gazed out the window, watching families and couples celebrate while I clutched a half-eaten bagel. The scent of fresh coffee wafted in from the cafe across the street, mixing with the bittersweet taste of longing in my mouth. Why did everything have to change? The laughter outside felt like a distant echo, a painful reminder that I was all alone on a day meant for joy and connection. My heart raced when the doorbell rang, breaking me from my reverie. Was it a sign, or just another reminder of what I'd lost? As I opened the door, the courier handed me a package, and for a fleeting moment, hope flickered. But then, with trembling hands, I realized it wasn't a gift. It was my son's confession, an unwelcome slice of truth meant for someone else. Did he even remember it was Family Appreciation Day? Margaret Carter had once cherished Family Appreciation Day. Not for the cards or flowers, but because it was a day her family remembered who she was before she became an afterthought. When Ethan Harris was little, he'd wake her with breakfast on a tray, bearing construction paper hearts taped to a paper plate. When Sophia Bennett was small, she would pick wildflowers from the backyard, bringing them to her in tiny fists, petals missing and stems bent. Those were the days her house felt alive. As dawn broke that morning, the silence enveloped her, heavier than usual. Margaret woke up early, made her bed, and slipped into her Sunday blouse, just in case they decided to stop by. She set out the good china, the delicate pieces with blue roses that only grace the table twice a year. She had baked a lemon-pound cake the night before, letting it cool under a mesh dome, just like her mother taught her. Maybe they're coming later, she told herself. Brunch turned into lunch, or lunch into dinner. She held tight to her hope. By 11, she had brewed a fresh pot of tea, laid out napkins, and sliced the cake into perfect pieces. One for her, one for Ethan Harris, and one for Sophia Bennett. She didn't even bother to set a plate for Lila Jacobs. Deep down, she knew better than to expect her. Margaret picked up the phone, calling once just to check. The phone rang 5 times before fading into voicemail. She didn't leave a message. He knew what day it was. She wasn't about to beg to be remembered. The scent of lavender hung in the air, a bittersweet reminder of afternoons spent in the garden. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting playful shadows on a faded apron. Laughter echoed from down the street. Children playing, so carefree, so joyful. A small hand tugged at her skirt. It was Sophia Bennett, with her wide eyes, painted with unconditional love, handing over a stick flower, an offering. "I see you, Mom," Sophia Bennett had said. But now, that voice felt hauntingly distant. Margaret Carter clutched her hands together, feeling the weight of isolation settle in her chest. It was Family Appreciation Day, yet she felt like an afterthought. The world outside felt like a distant echo, reminding her she was all alone. Her heart raced when the doorbell rang. Was it a sign, or just another reminder of what she lost? As she opened the door, hope flickered momentarily. It was the courier, handing her a package. But her trembling hands slowly revealed the truth. It wasn't a gift. It was her son's confession meant for someone else. Did he even remember the significance of this day? Margaret had once cherished Family Appreciation Day, for the simple joy of being remembered. Back when Ethan Harris was little, he'd wake her up with breakfast on a tray, bearing construction paper hearts taped to a paper plate. Sophia Bennett would pick wildflowers, bringing them in tiny fists, petals missing, stems bent. Those were the golden days, when her home felt alive. But now, the silence loomed heavier than usual as dawn broke. Margaret woke early, made her bed, and slipped into her Sunday blouse, just in case they decided to stop by. She set the good china on the table, delicate pieces graced with blue roses. After baking a lemon-pound cake, she let it cool beneath a mesh dome, just like her mother taught her. Maybe they're coming later, she told herself. Brunch turned into lunch, or lunch into dinner. She desperately clung to hope. By 11, she brewed tea, laid out napkins, and sliced the cake into perfect pieces. One for her, one for Ethan Harris, and one for Sophia Bennett. Not that she expected Lila Jacobs to show up. She picked up the phone just to check. It rang 5 times before fading into voicemail. No message left behind. He knew what day it was. She wouldn't beg to be remembered. By Tuta, she had all but surrendered. Moving to the living room, she sat in her favorite chair, gazing out the window. Neighbors came and went, balloons and gift bags in hand. Across the street, Mrs. Jenkins' daughter pulled into the driveway, holding a bouquet bigger than her torso, teetering in heels. That's how you knew they cared. Margaret stared at her lukewarm tea, rationalizing. Maybe there was traffic, maybe a last-minute emergency, or maybe they simply forgot. No way Lila Jacobs would let them forget. That woman ran her house like a courtroom. Deep down, Margaret suspected it was on purpose. She ate her cake in silence, refusing to cry. She wouldn't shed tears over feeling invisible. After all, she'd lived long enough to understand. When you're no longer the center of your child's world, you fade into background noise. The love you once gave? Just a relic of their childhood, something they grow out of. But she held her dignity. Fork in hand, she savored every bite as if it were served in a 5-star restaurant. Around 4, a knock at the door caught her off guard. Heart racing, she thought maybe they had come after all. Maybe Sophia Bennett begged to see her and Ethan Harris caved. Smooth blouse, brushed crumbs. She went to the door, pretending she wasn't holding her breath. But it wasn't Ethan Harris. A young man, in a brown delivery jacket, stood there with a catering bag in one hand and a white envelope in the other. "Delivery for Carter," he said. I blinked. "That's me," Margaret replied, confused but thankful. Maybe Ethan Harris had ordered food as a surprise. He'd done that before, sent a pie when Sophia Bennett had the flu and couldn't visit. But deep down, she realized it wasn't just the meal that she craved. It was the connection, the recognition, the love. The kitchen buzzed with memories, a rich aroma filling the air, pulling Margaret Carter back to simpler times. The savory scent of rosemary and garlic wrapped around her, whispering promises of love overflowing from the oven. Clusters of neatly labeled containers flashed a momentary glimmer of hope in her lonely heart, a small sign that maybe, just maybe, something had changed. Yet the kitchen's lively sounds, clattering dishes, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, felt more like echoes of laughter that had faded long ago. As the clock ticked closer to 2, doubt crept in, heavy and cold. Margaret unfolded the crisp letter with trembling hands. It felt like an ice cube, sharp against her fingertips, transforming the warmth of the moment into a stark chill. What awaited her in those typed lines pricked at the delicate threads of the family she once believed she belonged to. Maybe today would be different. As she stared out the window, imagining neighbors celebrating, balloons, gifts, shared laughter, Margaret forced herself to swallow. Across the street, Mrs. Jenkins' daughter struggled with a bouquet bigger than her own frame, swaying in heels. That's how love was shown, wasn't it? As she glanced back at her tea, now as lukewarm as her hopes, rationalizations bubbled up. Maybe traffic was to blame. Perhaps something had come up at the last minute. Or was it, deep down, an intentional forgetfulness? Tears flooded her eyes as she bit into the cake, gooey sweetness juxtaposed with bitter sadness. Nowadays, when you fade from being the center of your children's lives, you feel like background noise, a mere echo of the past. Yet Margaret held on to her dignity, savoring each bite like it was a 5-star dish. Just as despair tightened its grip around her heart, a knock jolted her from her thoughts. Hope surged in her chest. Could it be Ethan Harris? Maybe Sophia Bennett finally stood up to Lila Jacobs? Heart racing, she approached the door, brushing the crumbs from her blouse, trying futilely to suppress her anticipation. But when she opened it, hope shattered. A young courier handed her a catering bag, accompanied by a plain white envelope. "Delivery for Carter," he said, smiling warmly. Margaret blinked slowly. "That's me," she responded, confused but grateful. Maybe this was a peace offering. Maybe it was Ethan Harris's way of saying he cared. But discovery awaited within. As she opened the bag, the smell was intoxicating. Stuffed chicken breasts, buttery mashed potatoes, tender asparagus. Her stomach growled in response, and for a moment, a smile crept onto her face. Yet, when she opened the envelope, time ground to a halt. What she faced wasn't a card, nor was it a message of love from her children. Instead, it was a formal letterhead from Morning Grove Retirement Living, a high-end facility promising tranquility and care, the type of place she'd never imagined she would one day call home. Panic set in as her eyes scanned the details. "Welcome to your future residence." She felt her breath catch. How could this be? The registration was finalized, a move-in date confirmed, her allergies and medications neatly listed, even a preferred payment method linked directly to her account. A sense of disbelief crashed over her, making her legs tremble. Gripping the counter with her frozen fingers, she read the words again, slower this time. This was beyond neglect. It wasn't a suggestion or a brochure. This was her son, wielding finality against her, orchestrating a plan to erase her from their lives with whom my hands trembled as I pulled out the packing slip taped to the side. It confirmed the order. 3 plates, 1 for Ethan Harris, 1 for Lila Jacobs, 1 for her mother. Not me. I wasn't even an afterthought. I looked back at the retirement home letter. There was a sticky note attached at the top. It was handwritten in Lila Jacobs' sharp, rushed script. "Here's the packet for Doug to sign. Once it's official, she'll be out before summer." Thank God. I couldn't breathe. That note wasn't meant for me. It wasn't meant for anyone who cared about me. It was meant for the man I raised and the woman I tried so hard to get along with, and it came into my hands by sheer accident. A single moment of clumsy fate. One courier handing the wrong envelope to the wrong woman, or maybe the right one. I sank into my kitchen chair. The house was silent, but it felt loud now. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. The hum of the fridge sounded like a warning. For so long, I'd ignored the signs. The way Lila Jacobs talked over me during dinner. The way Ethan Harris stopped calling unless he needed something. The way they discouraged Sophia Bennett from spending too much time here. It all made sense now. They weren't waiting for me to get sick. They were planning around it. I remembered a conversation from last fall. Ethan Harris asking if I'd updated my will, suggesting we streamline my finances. At the time, I thought he was just being responsible. I even thanked him for looking out for me. I didn't know he was looking to take over, and Lila Jacobs, she always hated this house, said it was too old, too cluttered, not good resale material. I should have known when she offered to help me declutter last Christmas that she was really sizing it up. I stood and walked into the hallway down to the linen closet where I kept the fireproof box. I opened it and pulled out my financial folder. Inside, bank records, property deeds, insurance policies. I flipped through until I saw the account number listed on the retirement packet. A shaft of sunlight broke through the window, illuminating the very couch that once cradled Ethan Harris. He lay there, feverish, head nestled in Margaret's lap. That blanket? It whispered tales of tenderness and warmth. The scent of lavender wrapped around her, symbolizing the quiet afternoons filled with laughter, stories that knitted them tightly together. But now, those echoes felt like distant memories. Instead of laughter, silence filled the space, wrapping around her heart like a cold shroud. Was this what it felt like to be forgotten? Margaret's hands trembled as she stared at the packing slip. 3 plates. 1 for Ethan Harris, 1 for Lila, and 1 for her mother. Not her. Just a reminder that she wasn't even an afterthought. Retrieving the letter from the retirement home, her breath caught. A sticky note rested at the top. Lila Jacobs' handwriting was sharp, hurried. "Here's the packet for Doug to sign. Thank God she'll be out before summer." It wasn't a note meant for her. It was an outline of a plan, a cold strategy masking as concern. Did they truly believe she wouldn't notice? For years, she'd endured the subtle signs. Lila's dismissive remarks over dinner, Ethan Harris only reaching out when he needed something, and poor Sophia Bennett, encouraged to avoid spending too much time with her. Everything clicked into place. They weren't waiting for her to get sick. They were preparing for it. Hadn't Ethan Harris asked about updating her will last fall? At the time, she thought it was responsible. But now, it felt like betrayal. The kettle whistled, snapping her back to reality. She barely registered turning it on, pouring herself a cup of lukewarm tea she didn't actually want. Then, she drifted toward the living room, sinking into that familiar couch. There she waited countless times before, hoping someone would remember she mattered. Next to her lay the ominous envelope, brimming with unrealized fears. Resolutely, she picked up the phone and dialed Ethan Harris. 4 rings. He finally answered, a casual tone betraying the underlying tension. "Hey, Ma. Been a busy day. How are you?" His nonchalance stung. Busy? Like her own life was some background soundtrack to his? "Just had some unexpected mail delivered," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What kind?" he asked, suddenly alert. "A welcome packet from Morning Grove Retirement Living." Silence filled the void between them. Could he hear her heart pounding? Then she heard it, a muffled voice in the background, almost a whisper. "She knows." Margaret's resolve strengthened. "Look, Ma, we were going to talk to you about that." "No, Ethan Harris, you weren't." Was he really trying to spin this as a kindness? "Lila Jacobs doesn't know me, and you clearly don't either." His voice cracked, revealing just a hint of vulnerability he couldn't hide. "It's not like that." Margaret felt a crack in her heart, a glimmer of hope mixed with an overwhelming ache. Would they see her? Margaret Carter stood in her quiet kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear, the other hand gripping the envelope like a lifeline. It felt like an insult, the way they sent her food as if she were a stray dog. Family Appreciation Day was canceled this year, but it wasn't just one day. She could feel the emptiness stretching infinitely. "You're planning to take me out of the home I built with your father," she said, keeping her voice steady. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. "Margaret, you're making this dramatic," Ethan Harris replied, exasperation leaking through. "No, this is clarity, something I haven't felt in ages." She paused, the bitterness rising. "Don't come here again. I'll make my own arrangements." With that, she hung up, her heart racing, an eerie calm washing over her. Her living room was still, a sanctuary of memories that felt like a betrayal now. Ethan Harris's absence throbbed in the quiet. No call returned, no apologies, just a chill in the air that whispered of secrets hidden behind civil facades. She felt like prey, trapped in this house where every corner told stories she knitted into blankets and baked into lemon cakes. In the eyes of her family, she'd become an obligation, a fading photograph waiting to be packed away. The welcome packet lay beside her like a snake, hissing truth now laid bare. This was no last-minute decision. No, it was a cold, calculated scheme, disguised under well-meaning smiles and ignored phone calls. They weren't waiting for her decline. They were planning for it, counting down the days until she could be tucked away, labeled, and forgotten. But Margaret was not fading. The morning light broke through the clouds the next day, illuminating her path. Instead of tears, she felt a determination swell. There were things she had left untouched, secrets safe from Ethan Harris's contempt. She picked up the phone again, dialing Michelle Dillard, her old friend turned attorney. "It's Margaret," she said simply, knowing that this call would change everything. Just as she spoke, a familiar sound drifted through the open window. Laughter, warm yet haunting. It felt like a ghost of the happiness that had once graced these walls. Memories tugged at her heart, but she was ready to face the truth. The air thickened with realization, nostalgia swirling like the scent of rain on pavement, invigorating and bittersweet. And in that moment, the layers of emotional distance began to peel away, prompting her to uncover the hidden truths buried deep within family ties. Would they finally see her? Would they choose the love she desperately craved? I hadn't talked to her in years, but when Millie picked up on the second ring, it felt like we were back in history class, side by side. "Millie Carter," she said, "haven't heard from you in too long. What's going on?" "I need to change my will," I replied, urgency rising in my gut. "Today." Without hesitation, she said she'd be over that afternoon. By noon, the door swung open. There she stood, briefcase in hand and a stack of fresh papers ready. I poured her a cup of coffee and laid it all bare. Ethan Harris's betrayal, the nursing home nightmare, the financial deception. Millie didn't even blink. "That's elder fraud," she said. "You want to file a claim?" "No," I replied, biting back frustration. "I want to make sure he never touches another dime of my money again, and I want my house safe." We spent 2 hours, and with every document we reviewed, I felt like I was sealing up a door no one else would sneak through again. I updated my will, revoked his power of attorney, and shifted everything into a living trust with Millie as co-executive. I transferred ownership of the house into that trust. When we finished, she looked at me, her lawyer's gaze sharp. "Do you want him to know?" "Not yet." I wasn't done watching them reveal their true colors. Later, the phone rang. Sophia Bennett, my granddaughter 17, soft-spoken and observant. "Grandma, are you okay?" Her voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Why do you ask, baby?" I hesitated, considering the weight of my words. There was a pause. "Dad and Mom were arguing. I overheard something about you being mad about a delivery." It stung, the thought of Lila Jacobs interfering with her so subtle, so hurtful. I wanted to ask Sophia Bennett if she knew the whole story, if she was part of their plans. But I shelved the thought. Sophia Bennett wasn't like them. "I found something they didn't want me to see," I finally said, my heart racing. In that haunting moment, the layers of emotional distance began to peel away. I felt something in the air, heavy like the scent of rain on pavement, bittersweet yet invigorating. Would they finally choose love? Would they see me standing here, ready to reclaim my story? The kitchen hummed with the comforting scent of cinnamon and baked apples. It was a familiar embrace that once wrapped Margaret Carter's family in laughter and stories. Sunlight streamed through a dusty window, illuminating a moment that felt both cherished and haunting. Margaret stood at the stove, her heart heavy, tethered between hope and despair. Her mind drifted to long-lost memories, like a warm breeze stirring leaves. She could almost hear her daughter Sophia Bennett's laughter, echoing from their flower fights, delightful chaos splattering joy across the kitchen. But now, Margaret sensed an emotional gulf widening, like the empty chairs at the table, silent witnesses to love stifled by neglect. Each recollection lingered, wrapping around her like the sweet aroma in the air, bittersweet reminders of connection now frayed. Why had it come to this? Margaret yearned to feel valued, to be remembered, not just the Margaret Carter, but someone whose presence mattered. A shiver ran through her as she thought about Ethan Harris, the thoughtful man whose emotional distance weighed heavy on her heart. He wanted to reach out, yet somehow the scars of estrangement held him back. And then there was Sophia Bennett, innocent, caring, unsure how to navigate the expectations pressing down on her. Who could blame her? With Lila Jacobs, the neglectful figure looming like an unwanted specter, family dynamics spiraled in a way that felt almost inevitable. The bittersweet weight of it all wrapped around Margaret, an artist desperately trying to paint a masterpiece with broken colors. Would the love they once shared flicker back to life? Could they reclaim the warmth of home that had grown so cold? The lingering questions echoed in her heart, mingling with the scent of hope that refused to fade. The journey had to begin somewhere, right? A single moment could shift the tide. A single voice could break the silence. Would they summon the courage to step into the light of understanding and connection, or would the shades of neglect continue to cast shadows over their lives? Margaret could only wait, hope flickering like a candle in the dark. I'd laughed in it, grieved in it, grew old in it, and for a brief moment, I'd let myself believe someone could just come in and take it from me. Not anymore. The next day, I stood out on the porch with my tea and watched the neighborhood wake up. Mr. Franklin across the street watered his tomato vines. A woman in a pink tracksuit walked her golden retriever past the mailbox. It was ordinary, but peaceful. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for anything. Not for calls, not for explanations, not for the other shoe to drop. Then I saw Lila Jacobs' SUV turn onto the street. It pulled up in front of my house and parked too close to the curb as usual. She stepped out in her cream blouse and heels, sunglasses perched like armor. She didn't have Sophia Bennett with her, just her purse and a paper folder in one hand. I didn't invite her in. She walked up the porch steps stiffly, clearly rehearsed. She stopped just short of the door, probably surprised to see me standing there calm and unmoved. "Mildred," she said, forcing a smile. "Can we talk?" "You've got 3 minutes," I said, and sipped my tea. She cleared her throat. "I think there's been a big misunderstanding. Ethan Harris and I were only trying to do what's best for you. You forged my medical information and initiated a transfer to a facility without my consent." I replied, "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a betrayal." Her smile didn't falter, but her neck flushed red. "We thought we were helping." "No," I said. "You thought you were getting rid of me." She held up the folder. The home was beautiful. You would have had a private suite, a garden, weekly massages. We only wanted to give you comfort. I stared at her. "You want to talk about comfort? Comfort is eating breakfast in your own kitchen. Comfort is choosing when you go outside, when you rest, when you speak. Comfort is freedom, not polished isolation." Her hand twitched. We didn't mean for it to feel like that. Then why did I find out through a delivery mistake? I asked. As the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the porch, an unexpected letter slipped through Margaret Carter's mailbox. The crisp rustle of paper echoed in the still air. Heart racing, she unfolded it, and a wave of shock washed over her. The name she had buried deep, her own mother's, appeared on the page with a desperate plea for forgiveness. The fragrant scent of jasmine from her blooming garden enveloped her, unlocking memories of a past she thought she'd locked away forever. Why hadn't she seen this coming? The days became endless after Lila Jacobs and Ethan Harris distanced themselves. They fought about everything, even the trivial stuff. But inside, Margaret felt invisible, like a ghost in her own life. Then there was the day she stood on the porch, sipping tea. It was quiet, normal, until Lila Jacobs' SUV pulled up, her familiar smugness radiating from the tinted windows. Margaret felt her heart race as Lila Jacobs stepped out, clad in her armor of pretension. "Mildred, can we talk?" Lila Jacobs' smile felt forced, brittle. 3 minutes, Margaret replied, her calm voice sharper than any knife. Lila Jacobs cleared her throat. "Ethan Harris is upset. He says you locked him out of the accounts." "Is that true?" "Yes. Margaret answered, her voice steady. The will, the deed, the trust. All of it. Lila Jacobs blinked, stunned. You can't do that without telling him. I can, and I did. Each word dripped with years of unvoiced pain. This is mine. I won't be a burden anymore. Lila Jacobs' rationale wavered. She stepped back, visibly shaken. I don't know what Sophia Bennett told you. She didn't tell me anything. I told her everything. There it was, the moment of reckoning. Margaret felt the weight lift, the shadows retreating. Then you're going to regret this, Lila Jacobs spat out. But Margaret just watched, calm and unyielding. 2 days later, hope flickered back into her life when Sophia Bennett returned. The sweet scent of daffodils filled the air, fresh and innocent as Sophia Bennett approached with an unguarded hug. Mom's furious, she whispered. Let her be, Margaret said, the warmth of their bond surging to fill the void left by turmoil. They sat on the back patio, sharing stories of the past while the world outside rushed by. Margaret spoke of her father, his tomato plants, and the times they danced barefoot in the kitchen, joy mingled with loss from a life less complicated. He wasn't always like this, Margaret said quietly, reflecting on Ethan Harris. I know, Sophia Bennett replied, glancing away, but he is now. Each word lingered like the fading light, yet the flicker of hope glimmered between them. Would this be their moment of reconnection, or a step into deeper shadows? Only time would reveal the truth. Margaret Carter had always been the anchor in a sea of chaos, but in that moment she felt like a ghost in her own life. The tea she was sipping felt warm, grounding her as memories flickered in her mind. Then, Lila Jacobs' sleek SUV rolled into the drive, the tinted windows blocking any hint of her intentions. Margaret's heart sped up. Here came the storm, bright and loud. Margaret, can we talk? Lila Jacobs stepped out, oozing her usual pretense. That forced smile turned sharp, like glass. Ethan Harris is upset. He says you locked him out of the accounts. Is that true? Yes, Margaret replied, her voice steady as granite. The will, the deed, everything. The words hung in the air, thick with years of unspoken hurt. You can't do that without telling him. Lila Jacobs' outrage barely masked her disbelief. I can, and I did. Each word was a bullet, striking through the silence. The weight of her past felt lighter. Lila Jacobs faltered, steps backward, showcasing her retreat. 2 days later, a hint of hope flirted with reality when Sophia Bennett walked back into her life, radiating innocence and love. The scent of daffodils enveloped them as Sophia Bennett hugged her tightly. Mom's furious, she whispered, genuine concern in her eyes. Let her be, Margaret replied, warmth igniting the bond that had been stretched thin. Sitting on the patio, they shared laughter and whispers of memories, while outside, life surged on. But Ethan Harris loomed on the edge of this fragile peace, his presence a dark reminder of unresolved shadows. When he finally showed up, it was in that same old sedan, a relic of better days. He stepped out, smaller than she remembered, khakis and a wrinkled polo shirt replacing the familiar suits and confidence. Ma, he called, hesitant. Can we talk? You've been talking for weeks, Doug. With that, uncertainty hung between them like a thick fog. Would they reconnect or drift further apart? Secrets lingered beneath the surface, waiting to rise as Margaret steeled herself for the truth. She had felt wronged, but could she forgive? Beyond her past, could a new beginning blossom? The echoes of their shared history echoed in her heart, each memory a thread, weaving a tapestry that could either unite them or bring them to their knees. Only time would tell which path they would choose. I just don't want to be a burden anymore, I said, my voice trembling. He lowered his gaze like a kid caught sneaking cookies. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Ethan Harris murmured, shame washing over him. It wasn't about intention, It was about reality. You thought you were doing what's best for you, I shot back. I could see guilt etched across his face as Lila Jacobs pressed in. She said, "You're forgetting things, that it's not safe for you to live alone," she threw out like an accusation. I arched an eyebrow. What exactly did I forget, Doug? The code you took or the will you never bothered to read? Silence hung thick between us. Don't pin your choices on Lila Jacobs. You signed those papers. His voice cracked. I was scared. We've got the girls, the house, the bills. It's a lot. I thought it was time to look ahead. So you planned a future that didn't involve me? I whispered fiercely. He inhaled deeply, regret written all over him. I brought something. He pulled out an envelope, hesitating as if it were a live wire. It's a letter from Sophia Bennett. That stopped me cold. I stepped down, took the envelope, and ripped it open. A handwritten note. Pure emotion spilled across the page. Dear Grandma, I know things have been tough lately, and I've been too scared to say anything. When I figured out what they were planning, I didn't want to be shut down. But after seeing you last week, I felt different. You've always made me feel seen. I don't care what they say. You're strong, you're sharp, and they were wrong. I love you, and I want to spend more time together. The words wrapped around my heart, squeezing tight. I folded the letter, staring deep into Ethan Harris's eyes. She's better than both of you, I stated, feeling the weight of truth. I know, he whispered, defeated. I gestured toward the driveway, my resolve firm. You can go now. He lingered like he wanted to argue but didn't dare. Silently, he turned and walked back to his car, leaving a void I wasn't ready to fill. As he left, the scent of rain clung to the air, each drop a promise of renewal. Would we ever find our way back? Would hope bloom again in this fractured family? Only time would tell. When he drove away, triumph felt like a ghost. It was just exhaustion. Exhausted by men who retreat when life gets tough. Worn out by women who smile while quietly burying you. Tired of pretending forgiveness is as easy as breathing. Back inside, I placed Sophia Bennett's letter in the drawer beside my own unsent words. I sank into a chair, exhaling long and deep, closing my eyes against the weight of it all. Later that afternoon, Michelle dropped by with a packet full of final paperwork. She handed me the new title for the house, my name, Alone, safe from future power plays. You did the right thing, she said. Most wouldn't have paid attention until it was too late. I almost didn't, I replied. A stranger had handed me the truth in a paper envelope. Michelle smiled knowingly. Funny how fate works, isn't it? Before she left, she paused. Any final wishes? Anything beyond what we've discussed? I nodded firmly. I want Sophia Bennett to have the house when I go, not as a scrap of obligation, but because she showed up, because she asked questions while the others made decisions, and because she still knows how to love with her eyes wide open. Michelle jotted it down. Done. That night, I finally opened my recipe box, untouched and gathering dust. Flipping through those old cards, each one stained with memories, chicken pot pie, buttermilk biscuits, lemon pound cake, I wrote anew. Title, Sophia Bennett's First Dinner. Ingredients, 1 granddaughter, 1 kitchen, 1 memory that matters. This would be my centerpiece, a promise of love. The following Sunday, Sophia Bennett arrived, a tote bag in one hand, an apron draped over the other. Standing on my porch, she looked older, not from makeup or fancy clothes, but from the strength she carried. Shoulders squared, eyes steady. No longer a child caught in family crossfire. She was choosing sides, and she chose mine. You ready to cook? She asked, her voice brightening the air thick with hope. A flicker of emotion caught in my throat. Let's make memories, I breathed. the scent of fresh starts mingling with a hint of rain still hanging on the breeze. Would this be the beginning of something beautiful, or would those old shadows come creeping back as the dinner simmered? Only time would tell. Margaret Carter sat in her kitchen, sunlight pouring through the window, the warmth still unable to chase away the chill lingering in her heart. Each sip of coffee stirred echoes of laughter from the night before, but a shadow darkened her thoughts. Suddenly, it hit her. The letters were more than memories. They were the key to how her children saw her. As she sifted through the stacks of neatly kept papers, one note fluttered out, revealing Sophia Bennett's school project on family, half finished, yet bursting with innocent love. Could this simple piece unlock the door to connection? She remembered telling Sophia Bennett stories about her grandfather, how he'd approach home improvement with his quirky spirit, whistling and tumbling into a rose bush when he lost his footing. They had laughed together, the kind of laughter Margaret thought was lost forever. But now, that joy felt within reach again. When Sophia Bennett stood beside her the next day, hands deep in soapy water, the weight of unspoken questions hung in the air. "Grandma, are you really never going to talk to Dad again?" There was a pause, and Margaret offered a gentle reply. Forgiveness takes more than an apology. It takes real change. Did Sophia Bennett understand? The flicker of worry in her eyes told Margaret her heart was caught in a tug-of-war. That evening, under a blanket of stars, they settled on the porch swing, each gentle sway reminding Margaret of the delicate balance between love and self-worth. Would those shadows pulling at her heart fade away or linger like a distant storm? Days later, Margaret opened a drawer filled with letters, hers and her daughter's. One was scribbled in fear, another dripped with affection. Alone in her room, she penned a new note to herself. She was not what others had said. She was not merely old, confused, or a burden. No, she was the keeper of stories, vibrant and alive. The next morning brought a new beginning. While sipping coffee, she circled a local library's ad for community storytelling. Seniors welcome. The heart of her spirit ignited. Then came a call from Michelle, her lawyer. "You sure you want to do this?" "I am." And as they discussed wills and futures, Margaret confided the title of her imagined memoir, "The Day I Was Supposed to Disappear." Laughter erupted between them, fuel for the fire that refused to be snuffed out. On Saturday, she caught sight of Lila Jacobs' SUV rolling past her street again, a familiar dread urging her to shrink away. This time, Lila Jacobs didn't stop. Maybe it dawned on her that Margaret wasn't going anywhere, that she had finally chosen to fight back. And so, there she stood, firmly in her home, reclaiming her power. No longer Mildred the dependent. Instead, she bathed in the strength of Margaret Carter, a woman with fire still coursing through her veins, ready to be heard again. In the dim light of a cluttered kitchen, Margaret Carter stands amidst faded family photos, heart heavy with longing. The air smells of stale coffee, a sad reminder of countless moments never shared. Then the door creaks open. Ethan Harris steps inside, nervous yet filled with regret. Sophia Bennett lingers by the doorway, her innocent eyes shimmering with tears. "Will we ever go back to how it used to be?" she whispers. In the silence, unspoken feelings hang thick like fog. Every second stretches until suddenly, like spring rain breaking the dry spell, they release their pain, a single embrace, a lifeline, binding them closely. "I'm still here, and I always will be," Margaret whispers, her voice warm and steady. When love battles hurt, hope flickers anew. Can family bonds finally mend? In that moment, under the soft glow of a distant streetlight, hope reignites.